What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're taking a look at the 40-year-old version, directed by Judd Apatow, co-written by Apatow and Steve Carell, and starring Steve Carell. Let's waste no time. Let's get right into it. 16 years later, the 40-year-old version to me is a movie that still holds up. This movie can still give you a lot of good laughs. It's backed by an awesomely funny performance by Steve Carell as the lead, as Andy, the man who has gone 40 years of his life as a virgin, until his three co-workers, Jay, David, and Cal, make it their mission to get Andy laid, and that's where the fun really ensues. 40-year-old virgin to me still holds up. Is this a perfect comedy? No. I think it does have gags that maybe back then were funny, but now don't find as funny. But there are certain gags to me that still really hold up and still get a lot of laughs from me. But I think as an overall story, the 40-year-old virgin really works for me. And a lot of that has to do with Steve Carell as the lead and Kathleen Keener, who plays the character of Trish. Their romance story is pretty much the strongest part. Is really holds up, and Carell and Keener, they have really good chemistry. And whenever they're on screen, it doesn't feel like I'm watching two people play roles. It feels like I'm watching real people. You know, they constantly stammer, they constantly giggle and laugh. It feels so natural. So yeah, to me, one of the movie's strongest suits is the romance between Andy and Keener, and of course the overall story of Andy trying to lose his virginity at the age of 40 also provides a lot of good laughs, and that's where the characters of David, Jay, and Cal come in. You know, David played by Paul Rudd, Cal played by Seth Rogen, Jay played by Romany Malco. You know, before these guys have awesome chemistry with one another. This was the early days of Seth Rogen as a comedian when he was still funny. I thought Seth Rogen in this movie was hilarious. Paul Rudd, this is the movie that made me a fan of Paul Rudd as a comedian. I love him as the character of David, and I also like how David has his own little story going on as he's trying to get over his ex-girlfriend, and it just drives him crazy to the point where he takes an oath of celibacy. I think the stuff with Paul Rudd is hysterical to coincide with the stuff that goes on with Andy itself. Great stuff. The gags in this movie, to me, like I mentioned, a lot of them still hold up. The manscaping scene still holds up. That scene is still hilarious. And just the overall bantering that Andy has with his three friends, the dialogue and exchanges is hilarious. Them trying to train Andy to pick up hood rats is utterly hysterical. I'm telling you, this movie's got so much good things in it. If I do have some problems, I think Andy's interactions with Trish's kids, I don't think those moments are as funny as maybe they were 16 years ago. Maybe it's because I just didn't really. Maybe because you're watching this movie, first time you see this movie, you're a 15-year-old teenager, so you're like, oh, this is great. Now you're watching now with a 31-year-old eye, it's like, I don't remember this being this unfunny. I mean, there are still moments of Andy's interaction with Trish's kids that are still funny and still hold up. And then there are other moments I don't care for, like when Andy and Darcy go to the clinic. Parts of that scene is funny, and parts of that scene is just not as funny. Is what I'm trying to get at. The scene with Andy's meat is hooked up with a transvestite. Him complaining about it is funny, but the entire scene itself, it lasts for maybe 2 seconds or so. Okay. Another complaint that I have with this movie is that I think it takes maybe a little too much time getting to Andy and Trish and that whole romance story. Like they set Trish up in like the first, I don't know, half hour of the movie, and then the movie doesn't really fully expand on it until you get to the last hour of this movie. I think they should have sped up the whole. I think the Andy and Trish story should have been told all throughout the movie. And in the background, you have Andy and his friends doing what they can do, doing what they do, pretty much is what I'm trying to get at. But as an overall package, the 40-year-old virgin to me, it still holds up, and it still, to me, probably has one of the best Kevin Hart scenes in his entire filmography. YouTube it, 40-year-old virgin, Kevin Hart. That is that's nearly 3 minutes of awesomeness. I love that scene, and that was actually my first exposure to Kevin Hart in general. That scene is fantastic, and I also do really like the ending where Andy finally spills the beans, finally tells finally gets the nerve to tell Trish that he's a virgin, and Trish is actually okay with it. And it actually explains why Andy is so awkward and and does certain things and is so protective of certain things and reacts to certain things, is because he's so uptight and wound up because the man's never got himself some TLC. I like all that stuff. So yeah, those are just my overall brief thoughts on the 40-year-old version. At the end of the day, this movie to me gets a solid 8 out of 10. It still holds up, and I highly recommend it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the 40-year-old version. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.